All right, welcome back to Dude Dads, guys. This is another week, not Friday this week.
Welcome back.
We've got a super special guest, guy that I would say wears many hats, right? We connected through EXP, our brokerage. Hank Avink, he's got an amazing story. And you stop me, correct me if I'm wrong with anything. Real estate agent, real estate coach, not just a business coach, but big on entire life, right? You call it your life P&L, which is another thing I've picked up on you. I think that's huge, and we can get into that. So today's going to be all about you, Hank. Right? I want you to tell your story, and we'll kind of just let it go naturally from there. So, with that being said, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Perfect. Well, let's back up to 1998. Won a national championship as a captain of a junior hockey team, and there's an asterisk to it because I got knocked out the first game. So imagine being the 19 years old, the captain of the team, and they tell you can't play because of a brain injury that you can't see. And that's tough because we all think we're indestructible. So I was getting off the tarmac after winning the championship, and I received a trophy and street clothes. So, as a 19-year-old, it was just tough. So I put the bag on my shoulder, and my hockey coach said, "Guess who didn't need that?" And we all have those defining moments. And he didn't mean it the way that it came out, but I was like, I'm out of here. So I got off the plane. As soon as I landed, I packed up my stuff and I started buying April 1st, 1998. No joke. I bought my first rental property. And, I just kind of disconnected from that, my whole life, which was hockey, and started buying rentals. And we had 42 rental properties by the age of 22. I was on the Carlton Sheets infomercial, and I was a bankrupt by 25. So...
Oh man! So what year was 25?
Well, 25. I would have been. It was like 06. So I got punched in the jaw before everybody else saw it coming. I had a commercial loan. They called it due, and then they changed the lending laws where you could only have 10 mortgages, and I had like 24. And I went to the banks and I said three things, and I was in mediation, and I go, hey, let's just sell them and I'll take a personal loan and pay you back the $100,000, which was about the difference. I put 20% down on them. And it was a young banker, and he wanted to prove himself. And he goes, you know what? You got too much of an ego. I'm going to bury you. And so I go, I'll just claim bankruptcy. I'm layered, and, life will move on. And so he pushed it. So I went to all the other banks and said, we got three options. First one is I can give you the keys back and I'm sorry. Or second one is we can work together and see what the loss is and figure it out. Or third one is, you can go fuck yourself, and I'll just collect rents as long as I can and do what I need to do. And so it was about a third. And, the defining moment for me claiming bankruptcy, I was up on a ladder fixing ice dams. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but,
yeah. Some old weather and ice shield up there. You know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah. And I had some gangbangers roll up, and they said, hey, Honky, who's going to shoot who first? And I chambered around in my H&K and pointed it at them. And I said, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And I stared them right in the eyes, and they said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm tired. And it was that day that I decided that, I was ready to, I was okay if I checked out. The pressure was unbelievable, and I didn't care if I died. And I thought, suicide wasn't an option. I did go home once. I was dating a girl, and my name was in the paper, and her dad, a good Christian, a good Christian that because they go to church is a good guy, and said, hey, I saw your name in the paper. I'm working 18-hour days doing everything I can. I go, yeah, it's been a tough day. He goes, and you think you're good enough for my daughter? So,
people say some bad stuff to you. It seems that keeps occurring.
That's pretty compounding.
People keep hitting you with one-liners.
Short 5 years, man. 6 years.
So I broke up with her the next day, and she goes, you're going to leave me because of my parents? I said, yeah, I got three things I'm looking for in a wife. I want in-laws, not outlaws. We just buried my father-in-law in May, who lived next door, helped him through hospice, which will tie into the story in a little bit here. I wanted a woman that made me better, and I wanted a great mom, and I got all three of those things, and I wouldn't have found her if I didn't leave this girl. So fast forward, I met my wife when I was, living on a lake, and it looked all good. But, after a couple dates, I had to tell her that, what she saw was all going away. And my wife doesn't swear. And I said, hey, if you want to leave, I get it, because it's going to be a storm we're going through. And she goes, fuck you. I was like, what? She goes, if you think I'm with you because of your money, you don't know me. And so we just celebrated our 20-year date anniversary, and we got three kids. And one of those kids we talked about was born and had to have open heart surgery. Mm-hmm. And this is where I just got chills. thought we were having a healthy, happy boy. I thought I had a business selling residential real estate, and I had, I don't know, 20 plus listings. And we found out that he had to have open heart surgery. And next thing you know, our whole world changed. And, what I realized was I didn't have a business because if I stopped showing up, I stopped making money. And I was forced every single day to make the decision if I was going to go to work or if I was going to go to Ronald McDonald House and go see my kid in the ICU. And I couldn't do both because, the bills kept coming in and, people would say prayers and thoughts, but, it doesn't do anything. And I drew a line in the sand and I said, never again will I be in a spot where a family needs me, money determines it. So tying back in with my father-in-law, when we realized he needed to go into hospice, I just kind of I wouldn't say I shut everything down, but my transactional business that I was doing. And I walked alongside him as we sold his tractor, sold his truck, sold off his equipment. And we buried him in May, where I was with him for the last 48 hours and pumped him full of morphine. And, I didn't have to worry about money. I mean, in the July of that year, July of last summer, when I took my first official month off, we still had $70,000 in income come in, and we didn't skip a beat.
Yeah. And just think, so,
it's a lot.
how old are you now?
What am I, 46, 47? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah. Not that it matters.
It took about 14 years to readjust everything. And, after you've gone bankrupt and you've had a kid go through open heart surgery, like, you can't hurt me. Like, what are you going to do?
That's exactly what I was getting at. It's like, you've already seen the worst, just about the worst, right? I would say anything that has to do with my kids is the absolute worst, right? And you're right. You could be riding high as could be, and then you get that one punch right to the dick, and all of a sudden nothing else matters. You know what I mean? You could lose it all. That's impressive. So like, you having those experiences, right? You give us a Cliff Notes version of, a couple decades. So I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, your mid-20s or so, or maybe even a little bit later, I guess, is really when you've gotten just super intentional about everything. Because I know you're big on it being intentional, right? With every single thing you do. And was it more the bankruptcy thing, or was it more your son's open heart surgery that's like, fuck, I got to really dial this in?
I think, I just tried to outwork stupid first, half of my life. And, I was always associated hard work with, results. And actually it probably hurt me because I just, now I work less than I've ever worked, and I get way more results because, I got this tattooed on me, math versus drama. So it was after my son had open heart surgery. I went from working 18-hour days where I had 3 hours a day I could work. And I was able to get just as much done because I raised my standards. I got real clear on who I was going to work with and who I wasn't going to work with. And I just got real intentional and kind of cut all the bullshit away, and people loved it. And I just kept turning up my standards and turning up my transparency. And, I pushed a lot of people away, but I pushed the right people came towards me. And, I had 600 flights in 3 years. I realized in Kalamazoo, Michigan, I wasn't going to be able to earn the income that I wanted via real estate. And so we took a risk. And my father-in-law, who I mentioned earlier, when I was on this journey, because I went about 8 months traveling the country just for an opportunity to get the job, he loaned me 20 grand to keep the run going. And 600 flights in 3 years changed my life and thousands of others, because when you get that much time on task and you're pushing that hard, it just gave me such a solid foundation. And I got a phone call from my wife, and she goes, "Hey, we got Henry deodorant today." And I was like, "I'm done." She's like, "What do you mean you're done? Are you done with me?" Because you can imagine 600 flights. I'm on the road. I'm like a stud. I come home, and my wife's been dealing with 3 snotty-nosed kids with my DNA in them. It was tough. And I said, "No, I got to get off the road." She goes, "Well, what do you mean? We just built a home." And I go, "I'm not missing these moments anymore. It's time for me to come home. We'll figure it out." She goes, "Well, we just built a home. I stay at home." And I go, "We'll figure it out." And, maybe it's our kids see a tough time, because, at the time we were making, between $400,000 and $500,000 a year. And, but then I worked for a family that was, we won't mention their name, but their logo was God Family Business. And you found out real quick when you were no longer useful to them, what their priorities were. I hate the word loyalty, and I like the word respect, because they felt loyalty went one way. And I think respect goes both ways. And they enforced their non-compete. So I had to start over. That's how I found EXP. And I went there just thinking if this thing works, it's going to change our lives. And because of EXP, I know this isn't a plug for that, but I found an income that had the opportunity was so great where the more success you had, the more freedom you got. And I just worked the math equation. I've tracked every single hour of work since 2016. So it's become a math equation. You could say any date from today back to 2016. I'll bet you any amount of money that you want. If it's a work day, I can tell you what I did every hour on the hour.
Nice.
Really?
Nice.
I like that.
Is that, I do like that too. Is that coming away of just journaling every day?
No, I don't. My journaling's Facebook. So you asked if anything was off limits. And what I realized was if I live my life out loud, when I go back every year and I see the memories, I can see the progress. So that's kind of turned into my journaling. I was real big in writing journaling before, but it was just taking too much work. So I just started sharing it. And there's a book by Russell Brunson called Expert Secrets. And it kind of gave me permission just to turn up the volume. Mm-hmm. And what it does, so I'm not that smart, and I'm not saying that to be funny. I was a C student at best. I have ADHD. I've had a lot of brain trauma. I'm donating my brain to the CT, whatever it is, foundation. So what I do is anytime I get an outcome that I don't desire, I put a new standard in place. So for example, if somebody doesn't show up for a call, or what I do is I'd say, okay, what do I need to do different to make sure that person shows up? So I'd be like, hey, if you don't show up, Jerry, I'm going to come and fucking break your kneecaps. Because the one thing that I don't mess with is time. So I'd set the standard where there was some sort of moral obligation and commitment. So if you didn't show up, you're just dead to me, unless you're in the hospital. So I started raising my standards and started respecting my time at a higher level. So anytime I got an outcome that I didn't desire, I created if-then statements. If this, then this. If this, then this. Then rinse and repeat. Therefore, you're never making decisions based on emotions. You're making it on standards and principles. And if you just live your life by standards and principles, it's a predictable result.
God, you were doing the same thing. Going through the same thing I was going through in construction. Like as you're talking, I'm like, this is everything that I've been going through. Because I used to do high pressure sales. So I took, it could be 8:00 at night. It'd be like, there's a lead 2 hours away. You need to go to it now. So I was on the road a lot. I lived on the road a lot, and you had to do the high pressure sales, right? So I'm in that point where like I'm doing what I got to do to sell. Yep. I get with EXP. I'm like, I'm done with that life. Like I don't have time. I don't have enough. The efficiency of my time is not great. Those guys who are the owners are benefiting really well, but I'm like, I'm not that stupid. I need to be in that position now. So I'm like, I'm going on my own. So I go into construction, and then I start spending a lot of time on Facebook. Then I have a family, and then I start taking on a lot of jobs. And I'm like you said, I was the same way. If I just work really hard, a lot of hours, the results will come. And then I get done. I'm like, I sit here on some Fridays and I just be like, I'm pretty sure all I did was make money for everyone else except myself. I'm like, I handled all the problems. I wrote out all the checks for all my guys. I'm like, the fuck did I make? Like at the end of the day, like I took on too much work and it actually didn't work for me. And I'm like, and I suffered the most. And I'm like, I need to do less. I mean, like I actually need to work backwards.
That's the statue right here. Yeah. Most people do addition. Their answer is more, more, more. Yet I think the answer is subtraction leads to multiplication.
Yeah.
Dude, I've used that saying so much since I've heard you say it a few years ago. And it's so funny because you and I have never connected like this other than a passing hello at EXPCon or something. And, the little things like that, like what you just said in net life, and those little tiny things I've like put in my pocket, and it just made little tiny shifts. You know what I mean? Or like, man, do I really need to bust my ass and sell 50 houses a year and miss so much, when my kids are so young? Because I have young kids. My daughter just turned 10. My son's getting ready to turn 6. And for the last couple of years, it's like, man, in Delaware, 20, 30 deals a year is a pretty fucking good living. You know what I mean? And I guess what? I got a lot of time now that I could coach my son's Pop Warner team, I could always be, I get to take my kids.
That's what we talk about with the net life P&L. So for example, we just bought a school and converted it into a dance studio.
Nice.
Worst financial investment on a P&L from the financial piece, but we have 200 plus kids that go through there every single month. And if you look at it, we're now raising our kids through a community and not just on our own. So We've got parents that are like-minded. The person that runs the school was abused as a kid, so she has a hypersensitivity to setting kids up for success. And I mean, when I look at my P&L, like my net life P&L on that, that's been the best investment I've ever made, because I'm not able to impact that many kids on my own, yet by providing a resource where they went from a strip mall where, so let's look at this. I'm sitting there watching in the parking lot, waiting for my girl to get out. These girls are running in between half dressed because they're from dance, because there's a pizza shop. There's a Dollar General right next door, and then a gun shop. And not stereotyping, yet when I saw this dude just sitting there watching these little girls run back and forth, I thought we got to change this. So I went and bought a building that was twice the size. And I said, hey, would you move in and I'll make your rent less than what you're paying now? They're like, huh? I said, yep, let's do it. And so we bought the building, and I mean, it's been fantastic. And that's where I think we have a moral obligation to go be good stewards of the money, because we obviously know the government's not going to take care of us and spend the money wisely. So what I've decided is, you got to know your numbers. And so everybody needs to figure out their net life income. So for example, my wife and I, we've got to make 360 grand a year just to run our household. Now, don't let the numbers, like if it's more or less than what you do, this is just our number as long as we make 360 a year, we can do everything that we want to do. So what we do is we set up our schedule so that we know that we can make that income, but we won't give up life or lifestyle or anything for more money. Now, we did 685 last year just based on the schedule to make 360. But what we do is when we're on track to make more than 360, we shift our efforts to leveraged income or recurring income. So transactional income, this is where real estate agents get it tough. They're like, well, I can make 15 grand. Why don't I just go to another deal? That's addition. Where subtraction is, if I can hold my breath and I don't. So let me teach you a formula real quick. We've got income. First, you need to decide if you have an income problem. Most of us don't, meaning we make plenty of money. The challenge is our lifestyle goes up. So once we figure out if we don't have an income problem, we got to solve our cash flow problem, because too many people think short term. So solving the cash flow problem can mean something different for everyone. For us, it's where we don't have to make short-term decisions. Our decisions are 1, 2, 3, 4 years out, because we're not worried about where the money's going to be paid for our bills. Then what you get to do is referee your life, relationships, energy, finances. So where this comes in is, if we're making more than 360 and we have an opportunity to make transactional business, or we have an opportunity to go leveraged where the returns might not be 3 to 5 years out, we'll choose the leverage, because that's going to be more of a longer term, safer play, because we'd rather make 360 than $1.5 million if we're building our leveraged income where we no longer need transactional income. Did I throw too much at you there?
No, I'm following you.
It makes a lot of sense.
That's
how I feel about my work, because I'm like, this income, it doesn't matter. I could work more. It just seems the universe is like, whatever, dude, I'm still going to take all that. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what I do. So I'm like, I was just telling my project manager, I was like, I need more time in the office to stare at my ideas that I have for the future. I'm like, that needs to start now, because if I just keep thinking about the next job, I'm going to be thinking about the next job. It could be $1 million. It doesn't matter. Universe will just grab it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's got to be more intentional.
I talked earlier about the wood stove that I had going, and that's part of my thinking time, because I know I've got a plan, because with my ADHD in business, you can't always see the results. So I know I've got to have a certain amount of wood stacked, which means I need to cut trees, which is good for my mindset because nobody can fucking bother me. I got to split it. So that's another thing that I get to do with my excavator. And so when I look at my time on my equipment, that tells me if I'm getting enough thinking time. So I look at my equipment as thinking time, and I know the more thinking time I get, the more I'm using this versus this, and I make more money.
Isn't that wild how that works? And all of those things you just, kind of ran through, and all of that encompasses this net life, life movement, whatever you want to call it. Right. And having your life P&L, you take in these little things, right? You do personal inventory. You talked about, hey, if you're very math driven, and if I don't like this, how do I change that? And it's all constantly. Can I give you
another example of that?
Yeah.
When my father-in-law was getting ready to pass, I knew grief was an emotion that I hadn't tackled yet. So I was hypersensitive. So I started doing some research, and most people numb themselves through tough times because we've gotten weak, right? The other thing was my marriage wasn't where I wanted it to be. I looked up, we had 5 kids. We have taken 2 kids in, one has since left. And I was concerned about my marriage when my kids left, like if there was going to be anything left. And I said, what's the one thing that I could do that could make our marriage better. My wife's never been a big drinker, so I decided to quit drinking alcohol in June of 2022. I was dealing with grief. I was dealing with a wife that didn't necessarily like alcohol, and I'd done some stupid things. Nothing terrible, but some things that, looking back, weren't good. And then the third one is we had some sexual assaults in our company, and they all were wrapped around alcohol. So I intentionally quit on the 22nd of the month, which was rev share, which was a quiet way of protesting and raising more awareness around, the challenge in our industry of, the infidelity and the drinking and all of that. So there's a 3-pronged approach. And over the last year, I've helped 18 people get sober by just sharing my journey, which I thought I was just going to do it for a year and pick it back up. Cause I don't think I had a problem, but I realized all the benefits of making that small decision and the compounding effect of what it's done for me. My blood works better. My cholesterol is better. I haven't missed anything. I mean, it was amazing how much just taking that one habit out has benefited me.
You really don't miss anything.
No,
I just did 3 months sober earlier this year, and I'm getting ready to do 6 months again. And at the end of the day, at this stage of my life, like, it was harder when I was in the 20s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's just like, all right, cool. So, like, I feel good.
I'm not hungover on a Sunday.
Get some shit done. It's like, it's really like, I tell my wife, she was like, really, you want to do 6 months? I'm like, it's easier to do now because I can't drink the way I want to drink. I want to howl at the moon. I want to be on a dirt bike. I want to wake up in the morning and not take care of kids. I'm like, so if it can't happen that way, I don't want to do it at all. So it's so easy to do now. And then I'll just focus on my.
What a great thing to admit that, like, if I can't go balls to the wall all in on it, then I don't want it.
I don't want it.
Yeah. And, I think that's shame and judgment or something or shame and guilt or something that men, I don't think do a good job of acknowledging. And through therapy, I learned my therapist said, hey, I want you to journal around all the shame that you have in your life. I'm like, I don't have any shame. He's like, yeah, I do. And I was like, no, I don't. And so, but I trusted him. So I dove into it, and I couldn't believe how much shame I had in my life that was below the surface. And if we can start addressing that, and I overheard a guy at dinner the other night, and he said, the older I get, the more I become the man I should have been.
I saw that. Yeah. I don't know if you posted or somebody else. I did see that.
Yeah, it was me. And it made me realize, a lot of people thought that I was a high I, if you're familiar with the DISC assessment. No, it's just social anxiety crawling out of my skin. And once I got true to myself, like, I'm an introvert. I'm in my pole barn. I'm not in an office. Like, I like people, but I don't like surface level crap. And the more true I got to myself, what I realized was I was trying to live by what society said. I used to hook up with women left and right, and I'd wake up and I was disgusted with myself. And I'm like, am I gay? Like, I'm winning the game, and I'm like disgusted with myself. The fact I just banged the chick that everybody wanted, and I want to gnaw my arm off so she doesn't wake up and I can sneak out. And what I realized was I was living life by other people's standards, and I wasn't happy or fulfilled. And then once I started being true to myself and dropped the shame and I started addressing it, I mean, that's why I said I'm a net life billionaire. The funny thing was, people actually thought I was a billionaire, which was kind of cool. But the reality is, like, I don't know anybody that has a better life than me. And I'm not saying that, like, my life's perfect, but how I've designed my life, I do whatever I want when I want. I don't do anything for money. I make a fuck ton of money. But money is just a tool.
That's it. And you being so big on time is, I mean, and that's where I'm late to the game, right? Like, I didn't become self-employed or into real estate until 2016, right? So I was a 9-to-5 or the whole 9 yards. So I feel like I'm, I think you say this too, patience with a sense of urgency, right? That's like probably one of the first things I heard you say. Yeah. And it's like, so that's where I'm at. Like, I feel like I'm in a hurry all the time kind of thing, So I love everything you said. So, like, a couple more things I want to touch on. One, I love how you get outdoors and chop wood, right? You move heavy equipment. You don't have to do any of that. You can obviously afford to pay somebody to go do that shit. I think that stuff is so important for a man to do, thinking time. It's therapy. I'll go deeper. I'm fascinated with this stuff. I think it does stuff to our hormones, right? You get out there in the cold and you're swinging an axe, your testosterone is going through the roof 1,000 points because you're tackling a task. You're working out, you're getting tired, you're getting cold, and all those things. Right. And that's like something I'm fascinated with, the whole endocrine system. But So like you said something earlier, we've gotten soft, we've gotten weak kind of thing. And don't you think, or give me your opinion on the fact that we all almost over leverage too much? Like get out there and shovel, cut wood, cut the grass, do something, at least if it's once or twice a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that the intentionality of you doing that? Is because hey, this is deep inside my soul and my DNA. I have to do this.
Maybe. I mean, I think I'm a blue collar guy that just realized that my body wasn't gonna it just wasn't gonna get me to where I wanted to go. Where it comes down to is I can't sit still, and I like being in shape, but I like being in farm shape, we call it. Yep. Where I got to get 10,000 steps a day. I got to get outside. If I'm set behind a desk all day, like it just doesn't do it for me. You got to break a sweat. And then the fellowship. I think men, we've lost fellowship. Like I got a neighbor that moved next door, and we're intentional about being good buddies. If you want a great neighbor, be a great neighbor. So helping each other out. And I think we've just gotten away from that. So why do I get outdoors? So I don't screw up my business, if I'm being honest. I get bored out of my mind with business because, I mean, once you figure out the math equation, it's just rinse and repeat, don't screw it up. So when I'm building something, it allows me to solve problems in my head. So it's keeping me fresh. It allows me to plan. It allows me to not drive my family nuts because I've always got to be doing something, and I get to see progress, and it's rewarding.
Yeah. And let's be honest. I mean, running a backhoe or a front end loader is just fucking cool. I mean, it's fun to do.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to get to learn how to do that when I was 14, 15 years old. I don't do it much anymore. But like you said about the fellowship in those tasks, and all I could think of was right away is like helping. We're in a big agricultural town, helping your buddy bale hay or fill the hay barn up. I mean, I had a buddy of mine a couple years ago, mutual friend of ours. He goes, "Hey, can you help me go put a couple bales of hay in the loft?" Yeah, sure, I'll be there. And it's it's summertime, it's 100 degrees, 1,200 bales of hay in the attic of a barn.
That's light work.
And and you're like, on the surface, this kind of sucks. But you look back on it, or even while you're doing it, you're cutting it up with your boys, you're sweating your balls off, you're laughing, you're having a good time. Nobody's really miserable. You're doing the most miserable work if you just look at it what it is. But for some reason, it's fun to do.
And you get the locker room.
Well, and I think one of the things that we need to learn to do is allow people to help us. So, I think all of us were brought up where we don't need help. And what I realized was if you allow people to help you, it's the second best feeling in the world. And you guys know what the best feeling in the world is. But so what I've learned is I ask my buddies for help. Do I really need it? No, but it's the only way that we hang out because we don't hang out and drink beer anymore. So if I ask them for help, then it gives us a reason to have fellowship, see some progress, and hang out and have buddies.
No doubt. That is, that's awesome. And I think, and the older we get, the busier we get, and our kids grow up and all that stuff, the more intentional you have to be, right? Because we can't just haphazardly do these things. It's like, you've got to be intentional about hanging out with your buddies and
you learn who's intentional about you. Like you were saying that, you might have wrote some people off, but if you are rising your standards, you'll see who's willing to hang out with you and rise their standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a book called Give and Take. And what I've done is I've removed all takers around me, because if you're a giver, you won't outgive another giver. So, I got real good at fierce conversations, again, through therapy. My therapist taught me, here's how I'm feeling. I don't need to feel this way. I'm willing to look at it differently. But if I felt someone was a taker, I'd be like, hey, here's how I'm feeling. I'm not keeping score, but in the same breath, there's holes in the bucket and it's not sustainable. And so, here's what changed for me. I was sitting in my boss's office and I was scrolling through Facebook. And now that I know what it's like to lose a dad, I saw that someone lost their dad, and the extent of my emotion was a sad face. And then I saw someone had a baby and it was hearts, and there was no change of emotion. I thought, what the fuck's wrong with you? And what I realized is you can only have about 120 relationships that you can manage, because the rest just becomes noise because you can't feel all those emotions. We just lost one of my mentors, Rick Jiha. He was one of my coaches. He died, I think, yesterday or the day before. And, Rick has had a huge impact in this real estate industry. And when I saw that he died, I could feel the emotion. But at the end of the day, my day is still going to go on, because Rick was not in the 120. He's someone that I've shared life with for a little bit of my time, but I don't have the ability to shut down for a week because someone who was with me in the past has gone. And that's what bothered me, was how many people can you actually, when somebody dies, get into action for, when, show up on their doorstep. So here's what I did was I broke down the 120. If Rick would have been an A in my life, I would have been on the first flight to go be by his widow.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been paying for the funeral. I would have been doing things without asking, but you have about 36 people that you can do that for. Otherwise, you don't have the ability to do that for 3,600 people. So what I started to do was I started to do math around if this, then this. If an A in my life has a tragedy, I get into action. If a B in my life, I do what I can. However, I look at my own finances and say, okay, where are we at this month? If our thing at a certain level of accounts are here, we do $1,000 without thinking twice, just to help relieve the pressure, show that it's there. So every time we have a life event happen, we put new standards around it so that we don't have to think. And so if you're in my 120, you're going to be winning. And if you're not winning, I care more about you than us. So I'm going to lean on you. Like Jerry, you got young kids. So if I see you, you're married, right?
Yep.
So if I saw you not acting in such a way that I wouldn't want myself to act towards my wife, I'm going to call you out. Hey, man, does your wife know you're doing this? Is this how we should be acting? Because frankly, if I'm acting like this, I hope you're pulling the reins in and saying, hey, man, this isn't how we're going to treat your wife and your kids.
Yeah.
So we start to raise the standards. Now, not everybody will like that, but you're not going to cheat on your wife when you're in my space.
Right. Yeah.
Does this all make sense? And if you start doing it,
100%. I've had those same conversations with guys as far as like, I'm holding you to this standard. I would expect the same. Call me out on my bullshit. Right.
Because at a weak moment, we don't, I mean, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, they're the greatest people in the world. And I don't know the exact situation, but I know that there's something going on timing wise. And I don't want to throw too much out there, but at the end of the day, we need good people can make bad decisions in weak moments. We need to have each other's backs to hold those standards so that when I'm weak, you're standing up for my standards saying, hey man, you're drunk. If you want to go fuck her tomorrow, I'm going to call Sarah and let her know, but you're not making that decision tonight and you can hate me for it, but we're going home tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a dude right there.
You're just as guilty being there.
Yeah. That's a dude. That's a good friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the people you want in your corner all the time, because you're right. We all, whether it could be infidelity or substance abuse or a million different things, right?
Things. Everybody's numbing themselves in some way, shape, or
if
form.
I know your standard, if I know what your standard is, then I'm going to hold you to that standard.
Dude, I know myself with work for the most of my life. It was easier for me to go to work than it was to deal with my family. And what I realized is I'm not naturally a good dad. Frankly, I didn't necessarily enjoy the younger years and all of that. And yet I had to put standards around my work so that I was a great dad. Meaning I worked from 9 to 2:30. And if I didn't get my shit done, I wasn't working after hours because I needed to be there for the family. And I think men have it tough right now because we're not only supposed to be the providers, we're also supposed to be, doing a lot of things that traditionally weren't our role. And there's two sides to every story. Like every once in a while, my wife will say, well, that's a man's job. And I'm like, okay, we're going to start playing that game.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. Dude, this is absolute gold. I know another thing I've always, not related to almost anything, but no one wanted to tell you is timing wise, absolutely terrible on my part. You said something about a book, it jogged his memory. 3-ish years ago, probably. You read Die with Zero.
Yeah,
okay.
Great book.
You posted about it, maybe January-ish, something like that. Probably TMI, but I remember reading it. I was sitting on the toilet and you mentioned that book and I was like, I got to read that book. And I didn't. I put it off for like 3 months, right? I'm not a reader. I don't like to read. I like to listen. So I listened to it. And I was like, fuck, this legit change was just a massive shift in my mindset. Unfortunately, it was also between January of 2021 to like March of 2021, which if, we're talking EXP stock prices, there was that big, and I'm like, fuck.
I sold it all.
Yep. And had I read that book, I would have made some different choices. I don't dwell on it. It is what it is.
So can we speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
Most people don't math out their finances. And Sarah and I mathed out if EXP stock ever gets to this, if this, then that, it's a huge financial move. So we already had in writing before it was even an opportunity, this much stock, $129 we're selling. So there was no emotions involved. So when it hit 129, we're like, we're going to sell it. It ended up running to 150. We sold all our stock.
Mm-hmm.
because so many people, they don't have a plan and they wait to like feel emotions. And I told everybody, I was like, hey, you're in the casino, you brought $20, you're up, cash in.
Yeah,
that was you. You had a lot of emotions left on the
dude.
old stock. I was like, you need to sell.
It wasn't so much emotion.
This is your time here. This is your time back. Then you can reinvest it later. Like,
yeah,
you're like, man, it's my original.
For
stock,
me personally,
man.
it was like, it sounds so dumb to most people. Think I'm a fucking idiot for saying this, but like, I just didn't know what to do with $1 million. Right? Like, I grew up in a hard blue collar working.
So here's what I want you to do. What will you do with $1 million? Because until you believe, Bidu have Zig Ziglar, right? So you have $1 million. What do you do with it? How much money do you need for retirement? I need 600 grand minimum, so I don't have to be a burden on my kids. Well, if we make $600,000 bets, we probably don't have time to go into all of that yet. Here's what it is. It's a success code. Skill set, time on task, experimentation till you get a victory and you get confidence. So anytime that you want to tackle something, you do the success code and you spend 3 to 5 hours a week consistently until you experiment enough to get victories, where these victories turn into activities. And then it's just a math equation. So like with EXP, I've only spent 3 to 5 hours a week on it. We've made $500,000 the last 3 years in revenue share. And I've only spent 3 to 5 hours a week consistently, because the success code was once we hit 10 grand in a revenue stream, we go to my financial team and say, okay, we've hit 10 grand in this revenue stream. What should we subtract in order to multiply? And my accountant asked me this: if you just continue doing what you're doing, what changes? I said, nothing. He goes, continue just doing 5 hours. It's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever given, because, and I say this with humility, I don't know that anybody's built a better revenue share for the reason we came here than me, because I've spent 5 hours a week. I haven't created a bunch of obligation. I haven't created a bunch of commitments that I can't keep. I have 1,100 people, and here's my rules. You'll never be able to say I wasn't there for you. You won't outproduce me. You get 3 strikes. You waste my time once, I'll educate you twice. I'll warn you third time, I'll never talk to you again. And if you come to me with something you could have Googled, that's a strike. You only come to me when I'm the person that can answer it. So if you can get it answered at a lower level, awesome. But if you come to me and 50 other people that you have a proximity to could have answered it, you're wasting my time. I have 1,100 people.
Yeah. That's and I've seen you say that over and over and over and over again. And what I take away from it is like, damn, he's got high standards. I think we all have good intentions when you come into those scenarios. Like if I was to ask you a question that I could have Googled, my intention is not to waste your time. Right. But
here's the thing is when I pointed out to you, here's the thing is I don't mind conflict, because when I pointed out to, there's going to be 3 levels of energy. The first one is victim. Oh man, why are you being a dick? Blah, 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 blah. The second one is anger. Fuck you, man. I didn't need you anyways. Or the third one is responsibility. You say, you know what, man, I screwed up. You're right. And that's I want to run with people who are at responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. When you hold your standards to your level, right, you're going to push away the people that you don't need to waste your time. And you're going to attract the folks that are going to, they're going to be doers. Right.
No, because if you screw it up, you're going to make it even. I know if I screw up, you want me to screw up with you, because I'm going to figure out how to 10X it and make it right. Fair?
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, dude. I wish we had a ton more time, just for a multitude of reasons. But all of this thing, if people are paying attention, listen to Hank talk, right? And it just does not just real estate. This is everything. It's everything you do in your life, right? And correct me if I'm wrong in any of this stuff, but the whole net life being this whole picture that you just ran through very quickly. It doesn't matter what you do, how much money you have, we all have goals. So you could literally implement this stuff to anything that you do, even if it's just being a better husband or wife, or just being a better father, or being a better teammate, being a better employee, right? It works with literally everything. And one of those things where watching you from afar, I'm not in your space, I'm not in your downline, nothing like that, but it's super impactful, right? And that's why I intentionally interact with your posts, because I want to see more of it, right? That's the stuff I like seeing, because it's also a reminder. You know what I mean?
Well,
you said the other day when I reached out to you, you never know who's watching. It's a good reminder. You never know who's watching. And it's good to know that, right? It's good to kind of be on your toes and know, hey, I got a purpose here.
Yep. And that's where 50-25-1 comes in, is I live my life out loud, because you saw it. And before this, we didn't have much of a relationship. I feel like I got a chance to get to know you. So you were seeing my post, that's the 50. Then we have an interaction at EXPCon or whatever, and there's an energy exchange. It's like when you shake someone's hand, you're like friend, foe, and you get that energy exchange. Then you message me and we had the 5 because there was some back and forth. Now we have had a 1. I think I might remember this. And my goal, the 1 is, remember where you were and what was going on when you had that last conversation. And my wife and I, right before I came in, I said, hey, it's time for us to write the book. And she's like, all right, because my wife's a writer. So the Net Life is going to be a book. And we finally have committed to saying, okay, let's get all these together in one place in a sequential way, because I've gone through over $300 in the last 16 years, and it's an unfair advantage. So I think that it's a debt that I owe to society to put everything that's worked for us in such a way that more people can have it work for them.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Now, if we're, are you okay with us sharing your stuff, websites, anything, any social media outlets?
My website sucks. So, you can share it, but it's not any good. Facebook, if people are interested, just follow me on Facebook, message me. I got a bunch of stuff on YouTube, but at the end of the day, I give most of my stuff away for free, because really what people pay for is proximity. And information is a commodity now, so I just give it away. And then if people want proximity or relationship, then there's barriers to get in, which might be paying, which might be joining EXP. But yeah, for sure.
Nice. Love it, man. Hank, I really appreciate it, dude. I know your time's precious. I don't want to keep going, although I think we can go for like hours more.
My pleasure.
I think like 10 more of these.
Yeah, I mean, we probably have a lot more in common than we've ever known. But obviously I'm just a little bit behind you. That's all. So, but thank you for everything, everything you share, everything you do. Appreciate you coming on today. Thanks a lot, man.
My pleasure, guys.